Is that better? All right. I'm going to call this meeting of the House Public Utilities and Telecommunications Committee to order. We have a number of things on the agenda. You'll see 3 House resolutions on the agenda that was put out yesterday. And also yesterday there was notice put out about 2 subcommittee hearings that went on. And one of those subcommittees passed out 2 of the bills that were on the agenda out of 4, and the other committee passed all 2 of theirs out of committee. And those bills are referenced on an updated agenda that I'm assuming was made available for anyone who was interested. We'll be considering them also. Today's been a very busy day. A lot of members on this committee are in other committee hearings, and some of our members have to leave pretty quickly. What I'm going to do first, and I hate to upset a few of my presenters out here, but I'm going to change the order just a little bit. We have 3 House resolutions, and I want to quickly take up 2 of those House resolutions. It shouldn't take too long, but both of them are by Representative Geisinger. Representative, you could go ahead and be making your way over to the podium. Since these are resolutions, they did not come through a subcommittee. So after Representative Geisinger gets through making his brief remarks, and if there's no questions or after questions from committee members, if there's anyone in our audience who would like to make some brief comments on these resolutions, I'll recognize you for such. But first is House Resolution 1635. Go ahead, Representative.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'd like to take 1636 first.
Okay, 1636. Go ahead.
1636. Give you some quick background. As you know, there was a House and Senate interim study committee on natural gas in Elba Island, which is liquid natural gas, and the concerns that the House and Senate have on the cost to the citizens for their natural gas. And once the hurricane came through and the Gulf found itself in trouble and we weren't receiving natural gas from the Gulf for a while, fortunately we had Elba Island. Elba Island is one of 4 ports that receives liquid natural gas and then is converted into natural gas and shipped throughout our state and up and down the East Coast. All this resolution does is it asks Congress to allow for the drilling of natural gas offshore. Now, there's a moratorium on it that the United States Congress has placed on it, and we're asking Congress to lift that moratorium. That's primarily all that is. Any questions, Mr. Chairman?
Any questions on House Resolution 1636? Go ahead. Push your button. I'll turn you on.
Number 3.
There you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At what point does EPA, how would that, since it's offshore, there's nothing affected there?
If you're asking me, I'm not sure where the jurisdictional boundaries of the EPA end offshore, but it's my understanding that these particular areas right here, there are some EPA concerns, and there may be some further longer-reaching maritime concerns as well. But I'm not sure exactly where the EPA limits in, but obviously that's not far enough out to be so far out that the EPA doesn't have reach on them, because that's what's holding us up is a lot of our environmental policies. And Geisinger, add to that if you need to.
Well, simply all it does is ask Congress to lift the moratorium that was set in 1982 and allow us to assess what we have. We don't even know for sure what we've got out there, which is what the next resolution does. If I may, Mr. Chairman, proceed.
One second. I have
Yes,
one more question on this.
Okay.
Representative Forster.
Just leave a point of clarification. The line of sight to the horizon out in the ocean is 15 miles, and I believe the EPA's limit is a 12-mile.
Okay. All right. Oh, go ahead.
Former EPA person, Mr. Rehab, could you elaborate on that?
Well, we'll have to. We can't right now. We gotta move this on. But can you nod your head? And is it 12 miles? Was Warren Forster right?
It is something that I never got involved in my entire career.
Okay.
He's
EPD, yeah, it's an EPD, okay. If there's no further comments on 1634, do I hear a motion? Have a motion and a second. No further discussion. All in favor of passing House Resolution 1636, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same. Hearing none, it passes. Now, House Resolution 1635.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The 1635 does basically the same thing. If you read it, it's almost identical, except that it asks that the Southern States Energy Board, which we are a member of, assess what we have offshore. You know, to say that you want to go ahead and drill is one thing, but you have to know what you have, because if you don't have anything worth drilling for, nobody's going to drill for it. There have been estimates made. They seem to be very generous. And by the way, gentlemen, if this ever comes to pass, the state will get about half the royalty off of this. So it will help to make us energy independent, and we will not have to rely completely upon the Gulf Coast for our gas. But basically what this does is ask the Southern States Energy Board to do the assessment.
Okay, thank you for that presentation. Any question from members of the committee? No questions? Hearing none?
We do pass.
Got a motion do pass and a second. All in favor of passing House Resolution 1635, say aye. Aye. All opposed, the same. It carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Geisinger,
Thank you.
for that. Next on the agenda, we'll call up House Bill 738, presented by Representative Lunsford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. House Bill 738 just came out of the Telecommunications Subcommittee. We made some substantial changes to it, sir, and I'm not sure that the members have the changes in front of them yet.
What I'm going to do, you're right, because that was just done in subcommittee, but our legislative counsel here has all those amended changes that were made, and if, with the committee's permission, I'm going to ask her to read in context those changes, and then we can have any questions among the members of the committee once she gets through. Legislative counsel, Sean Marie, if you would, please.
On page 1.
What's your microphone number, sir?
1.
1. There you go.
On page 1, lines 7 through 19, those will be stricken. So all of section 1 will be removed. On page 1, line 20, section 2 will be changed to section 1. Then on page 2, line 2, the 2005 will change to 2006. And on page 2, line 12, the 2005 will change to 2006. And then on line 14, the section 3 will change to section 2.
Okay, thank you. If you would, Representative Lunsford, just explain to us a little more detail of what that does.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. What this started as, House Bill 738 began its birth last year as part of another bill, which was the 911 bill that many of you were proud of to vote for last year, and we passed through the House and the governor signed it into law, which helped your phone companies as well as your local governments achieve the funds they were supposed to get and track the money that the state was holding and make sure it was spent in the right places. There were a couple contentious portions of that bill, and we separated them out and created this bill so we could study them over the interim. We never passed the bill so that we could create the study committee because we ran out of time, and the truth is we were just overwhelmed already with the workloads. By striking out section 1, we're taking out all references to any fees, fines, or anything. And by renumbering it, what we have done is now reconstituted the study committee so that we can look at it between now and next January to determine that when we move forward with legislation, we move it forward judiciously without getting in a hurry, and we do the right thing, and that really pretty much sums it up.
Okay, thank you. Any members of the committee have a question? Yes, Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 2, section 1, well, this is section 1, right?
Yes, sir.
Line item 2 through 5, I see where it says that after this conclusion of the session, the President of the Senate and the Speaker of the House get to appoint these people on the Joint Study Committee. Why was isn't the Lieutenant Governor included in those appointments, the Governor?
Well, in some situations, Coach, they are. It depends on the drafter of the bill, and they were a bit overwhelmed, we felt like, last year with about 20 or 30 study committees that were being placed in there, and we wanted people specifically from the telecommunications industry involved, so we were just limiting it to the chairperson of the House Committee on Public Utilities and Telecommunications and the Senate-regulated industries to do the majority of the picks. And we really wanted people that were more knowledgeable about telecommunications than just basically good folks.
So that's why you excluded them? That's your rationale?
No, sir, I was the author of the bill. I just
That's what I'm asking. You're the author of the bill, right?
Yes, sir. I just chose to do it that way.
Is there any other question from members of the committee? All right. Did you have any final thoughts or comments, Representative Lunsford?
No, sir, but to Coach, if it make you feel any better, most of the time on a House and Senate study committee, the governor doesn't appoint those people anyway, nor does the lieutenant governor. Normally it's by the... Yes, sir, I just want to explain. That's normally done by the Speaker of the House and the head of the Senate.
Okay. If there are no other questions, we'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion, we do pass, Chairman.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing or seeing none. All in favor of House Bill 738 by committee substitute, please let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the same. It do pass.
Thank you, sir.
Let's see. Next, we're going to hear another telecom bill, and I'm sorry I should have had the chair of that committee report that out, but next is House Bill 1060, and do we have a report from the chairman of the committee that conducted the meeting? I think that was Representative Foster. Do you have a report on House Bill 1060?
Yes, sir. We reported out HB 1060 with a due pass recommendation.
All right. Thank you. And that bill is authored by Representative Chuck Martin. Representative Martin, if you would present House Bill 1060. You can do it from there. That's fine. Number 27. There you go. Sorry about that.
Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, we have House Bill 1060 before you, LC 218640. This bill, entitled the Wireless Communications Security Act, I bring to you today to basically get our handle on prepaid wireless devices that are sometimes used by those that would do others harm, bad actors, if you will. They've been used in Europe to detonate explosive devices. They're used in the United States and all over the world by people who do not wish to be traced. So what this bill seeks to do is capture transactions where a person wishes or attempts to buy more than 10 of these devices and makes the retailer get identification for that. I would like, if the committee will accept, to propose an amendment to the bill. When the bill was originally drafted, I thought this was in place. It is not. What we wish to do is capture cash transactions. The reason for this is if someone is coming in to buy more than 10 devices for cash and they provide no identification, one might assume that they intend to do harm with these funds. So as the bill reads in 46-5-202, if they try to buy them with cash, we want them to provide identification. And in order to do that, I would like to propose to the committee to insert after line 22 on, insert after line 24 on page 2, a section C that would read as follows: subsection A of this code section shall only apply to cash transactions. So if the committee would accept that amendment and pass this bill by committee substitute, what this in effect would do is just require the resellers of these devices to capture information when someone tries to buy more than 10 of these devices for cash.
Let me ask the committee first before we move on that. Normally we don't do amendments at the full committee, but we have made exceptions. Is there any objection from any member of the committee about accepting an amendment motion to this bill? Is there any objection? Okay, thank you. So go ahead. You explained your amendment. Is that right? Is there any further explanation needed on that?
No, sir. I just would point out the learned attorney. I mentioned subsection A of this would only apply. The reason, and I would ask her to correct me if I'm wrong there, is section A speaks to when an ID needs to be required. Section B of the bill, of that code section, says that they need to keep a record of each sale in subsection A. So if subsection A doesn't apply to cash transactions, the portion of subsection B would not apply to cash transactions as well. I believe the reference is there. Just want to make that clear to the committee.
So is all that your motion?
Yeah, yes, sir. That would be my motion if the committee would accept this amendment.
We have a motion on the amendment. Well, first, let me see if there's any more discussion or any questions of the author of the bill. Representative Forrester.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just curious why we didn't, and this may be going to legislative council, why we just didn't insert this into section A.
If legislative
I
council
mean,
like to
just for
respond.
flow of reading, why didn't we just insert this in section A?
You could do it either way.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, the number 27.
Go ahead.
I spoke with legislative council. You could, in line 3, after any person, you could say for cash sale. Legislative council thought that setting it off in a subsection made it real clear to people that this would only apply to cash transactions. I'm with the will of the committee.
Okay. Is there any more questions or comments to the author? All right, hearing none, we have a motion to amend it as was stated by Representative Martin. Any questions on his amendment? We have a motion and a second on the amendment. All in favor of Representative Martin's amendment to House Bill 1060, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the same. Amendment passes. Now, we're either ready for final comments on 1060 or a motion. You're recognized.
Recognize we do pass House Bill 1060 as a committee substitute.
Okay. Motion and a second. Is that right, Legislative Council? That's okay. Okay. Let's say, we have a motion and a second. Any final discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of passing House Bill 1060 by committee substitute as amended, I believe, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same. Hearing none, it passes. Next on the agenda is House Bill 1547 by Representative Lunsford. Said it's by Representative Lunsford. 1547.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. And Representative Williams, on that last issue, if I could, it actually had, when you said between the lines, those two lines, I didn't look, but further in the bill, it shows the governor appointing 5 of the members to that committee. So I apologize for misspeaking to you. I didn't do it on purpose. Yes, sir. 1547, is that
Yes,
what
sir.
you called, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. 1547 is just pretty a simple bill, and what we're doing is just changing some dates that have currently expired in Georgia Code. The first date change occurs on line 13 on page 1. It's only a one-page bill. But what it said was on or after March 30th, 1990, any, and all we've done is remove that date because the date has already expired. And then on line 16, being actively involved in by July 1st, 1992, we've removed that date. And it talks about a meeting a statewide goal of waste reduction by 1996, and I'm under the assumption that we have as of yet to meet our statewide reduction of solid waste. And so consequently, these dates have expired, and by removing the dates, it allows us to continue to work on that program until we're done with it, because I assume it's an ongoing problem.
Okay. Any questions for the author of the bill from members of the committee? Any questions? Hearing none, I take it we are ready for a motion. Have a motion and a second on House Bill 1547. All those in favor of passing House Bill 1547, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the same. It do pass.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Just stay right there. Looks like we're ready for House Bill 1546. Are you ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I think we're working off a substitute as it was substituted earlier by the subcommittee.
Yes, sir, that is correct, and the changes in it were,
What's the number?
House Bill 1546. And If I'm right,
What's the substitute?
I'm showing.
Yes, sir, it is 1546.
Yes, I'm showing LC number 360243S. That's LC number 360243S. Does everybody have that? You don't have that? Chuck Martin doesn't have it?
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Actually, this is a extremely simple measure, but has some confusing aspects of it. This bill came about as the conclusion of a several-month-long study we did at the University of Georgia Griffin Experiment Station, which is the Georgia campus of the Urban Agriculture Division. And we had held a series of meetings concerning on-site wastewater treatment facilities or wastewater treatment systems, which is a glamorous term for septic tanks. And consequently, apparently, throughout the state, we have different terminology used. We have different guidelines used around the state for what is acceptable for placing a septic tank into the ground. Some jurisdictions allow backfill around them. Some do not. Some allow it to put on rock and then filled over. Some do not. And so we put a group of people together using the academia for the University of Georgia, and it was chaired by Dr. Gil Landry, who chaired the committee, to determine if we could come up with some methods so that the industries could get together and work with the state could work together with the industries, and that everybody could reach the conclusions. We found during the process that it was an extremely involved process and that we needed to take some baby steps. Now, what had come about was that the soil scientists and engineers were under the impression that they were the experts in the industry. And there's some old code in Georgia law that said that they could certify that this was a suitable site, and this health department had to accept it. The Attorney General, I asked for a formal opinion. He said, no, the state still had jurisdiction, and they didn't have to accept it. So what we ended up with was continuing court battles and arguments, and we put our state employee in the middle who's out there inspecting the installation of a septic tank, who has to run basically as referee between the builder, the developer, the health department, the county commissioner, and we're putting people in a bad position. So after meeting about 6 times, going through the situations, we decided that we would try to create a situation where we could figure out who's on first base and who really is in charge. Now, for those that were not in the subcommittee meeting, Scott Ulick with the State Health Department was involved in the meeting and is in support of this legislation, so there's not a problem from the state. They look forward to it as a means by deciding who's actually responsible. And what we're saying simply is that we could certify a soil scientist, engineer, or geologist if he is licensed and certified in the state of Georgia and meets the criteria set by our code sections. Then consequently, when you get to page 3, here's where the big one comes. On page 3 of the document, you'll see an affidavit that he has to attest to or she has to attest to. And what it simply says is if you're absolutely the expert and you're absolutely sure the system is going to work at this house, this is our homeowner protection part. You're going to sign it, and if it fails in the first 3 years, you're going to pay for it because we require them to carry insurance and post bonds. Consequently, now we know who's on first base and who's responsible. During the process of meetings, all we found was that everyone pointed their fingers at everyone else. No one wanted to accept responsibility. So this bill is a simple way of saying if you want to be in charge, you need to have a fiduciary responsibility to make that homeowner whole. It's an extremely consumer-friendly bill. There are a couple extra terminologies in here, and the amendments you'll find is we did not want to limit soil scientists or soil mapping to only soil scientists because for the past 20 or 30 years, geologists as well as engineers have been doing the same work. And simply what we've done is we've created a licensing review board, a criteria for the people who will be acceptable, and in addition to that criteria, we've included into that some extremely good consumer protection that says if you're claiming it's going to work in that house, you sign this form, put it on your plat, and you're going to pay for it if it doesn't. Other than that, Mr. Chairman, that pretty much sums it up.
Representative Murphy, you have a question?
Is this a widespread problem right now?
Absolutely, sir, all over the state.
Okay.
And here's what happens, Representative.
That's all right. Go ahead.
Senator, What actually transpires is this, and that is you get judgment calls or interpretations of the code. In many of the situations where I know Mr. Dodson's been in the construction business, you get into situations, some counties won't allow a permit to even repair a septic tank that's malfunctioning until they've been out and had a soil scientist check the soil and be sure it can be repaired. Well, what happens is a period of time that goes by, and someone's living in that house, and their lives are directly affected if they have no sewer. So what we're trying to do is decide who the experts are and decide that. And if they're willing to certify that I'm an expert, I met all the criteria from the state, and I do carry product liability insurance or errors and emissions, then accept my word for it and accept my liability that I'm going to pay for it if I'm wrong. Because what we're doing is we're trying to make it a little more consumer friendly and at the same time a little more builder friendly so they can get finished with these jobs instead of getting hung out for months. And I'm sorry, I know you're a banker, but paying interest on loans for homes while they're under construction.
Follow-up question, Mr. Chairman. On page 6, you say that you're exempting the following individuals: federal government, state government, and any local government. Is there a reason for exempting those?
That I believe, sir. Let's see.
Line 17 on page 6.
Oh well, that would cover your county employees and your state employees. In other words, you're going out here. This chapter does not apply to the following individuals. I'm not requiring a health department employee to go get an engineering degree and become a licensed or certified soil scientist, especially at the rate of pay that we're hiring them at, sir. We wouldn't be able to fill any of those job positions if we didn't exempt them from the same criteria.
But can they certify these things as being like they should be?
They can't certify them for an installation commercially, but they are the basically firewall for the homeowner and the consumer to prevent the mishaps. But they're not required currently under Georgia law to be certified or licensed. They have to go through an ongoing continuing education program provided by the state of Georgia.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions from committee members to the author? No more questions? Hearing none, we'll entertain a motion on House Bill 1546. Representative Smith, do you have a question? You're not recognized this time. Representative Dodson, do you have a motion you'd like to present?
Thank you. Representative Smith hasn't been here long enough to make a motion. So I'll make a motion that do pass.
We have a motion do pass. Do we have a second? We do have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of House Bill 1546 by committee substitute, please let it be known by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, the same. It do pass. Thank you. And we do have one more proposition before us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Lunsford.
Thank you.
But before I go on, before we go into the last resolution before us, I do want to express my deep felt gratitude to all our committee members that do show up here on time and make this a priority, and my frustration over those who come in when they feel they can and want to. Our last, yes, Representative Speaker Pro Tem Burkhalter, which one are you?
26.
There you go.
26. Did you call roll for this meeting today?
We had a roll call earlier. They were keeping up with it over here.
Well, I just think for the record we ought to exclude certain members if they don't bother to come to meetings. If they want to go to committee dinners, they need to come to the meetings too.
I will concur. Representative Smith, do you have something you needed to say?
Mr. Chairman, I've been one of your most diligent members this entire session. I have not missed a single meeting, sir. I had 2 bills to present just then. I apologize for my delay, and my heartfelt thanks for your work as the chairman of this great committee, sir.
Acknowledged. Thank you. Last on the agenda is another resolution. It's House Resolution 1604. It's one that I tried to put together. And real quickly, what this does, in times of emergency, this is an urging resolution urging the EPD here in Georgia that in times of emergency, when electrical generation is compromised, that these electrical generation plants can use their backup fuels and backup resources without necessarily having to get permission from the EPD, if I've stated that correctly. And this is just an urging resolution that that the EPD consider allowing them that flexibility in times of an energy emergency such as we had back in late summer, early fall. Are there any questions? Representative Dodson.
Mr. Chairman, at the proper time, I'd like for Representative Smith to recommend due pass on this.
Representative Smith, do you have a motion? Representative Smith, you got your button pushed. Did you have a motion?
This is a comedy hour, I believe. But, Mr. Chairman, House Resolution 1604, I recommend due pass.
All right, we have a motion to pass and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of House Resolution 1604, let it known by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Same. It passes. Thank you. And without objection, we stand adjourned. Thank everyone for being here.